Hello, and welcome again. I apologize if volume is off or if anything is off. Got a new computer and I'm trying to get everything working. It was all working, but then things fell over a little bit. Let me go settings quickly, go to audio. Audio seems to be working okay. Let me know if the volume is off. But we're about to get started. So announcing the API Security Hackathon by Treblle. This was written by my colleague and friend Kelvin, who worked with us at Treblle. He is, I'm orange. That's because I've got my light. Let me change the color. It's fake tan, really. I've been using fake tan. Oh, changing colors. Orange bold head. Yeah, sorry about the glare. Let me put on the starlight mode. There you go. My apparently my lights have an update. I'll do that later. So, in the spirit of fostering and building quality and secure APIs, we're doing a hackathon. Some awesome artwork by our designer, Dora, who is fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot. How to apply, judges and mentors, the prizes, people. Yeah, prizes are great. In conclusion, please submit your API because it's going to be a lot of fun. Languages and frameworks, we support a lot of them. You can go look in the docs to see if your language or framework has a supported SDK. We are working on our public API so that you will have more options in the future. However, if your language or framework is not supported, reach out to me. We will pay you to build it for your language or framework if we do not already have it. Unless it's like some super vague, like nobody's ever going to use this for an API. But the general rule of thumb, yeah, we will do. So the judges and mentors. I am going to be on Discord all week, mentoring, being available for people. I can hear Discord in the background, so I apologize if you can hear that. I'll be mentoring. Ask any questions. The only thing I cannot do for you is build it for you. If you want help, if you want clarification, if you want sort of direction or pointing, then let us know. The judges will be myself, Kelvin, Christopher Miller, who might be in the chat a little bit later, but he is recently joined us as a software engineer. I've worked with him before. He's great. He came from a Laravel partner, so we know his Laravel code is pretty good. Not quite as good as mine, but don't tell him that. And our special guest judge, Stephen Reese-Carter, you might know him as Valorian, or the person who runs Security in Depth or Laravel Security in Depth over on Substack. He is the main hacker man who's going to be making sure that your APIs are secure. But the purpose of this stream is to go through what do we need? How to apply, there's an application form. So requirements for your API. It needs authentication and authorization. No brainer. Input validation. We got to validate that input, people. Rate limiting must be on. Logging and monitoring with Treblle. This has got to be there so that we can actually judge it. You should be using UUIDs, not IDs. Now, the UUID is not a strict requirement, but we are looking for something that is not a sequential identifier. We should have method limiting on there, minimum of 6 endpoints, and any other API security practices you might want to apply. But that part's up to you. But 6 endpoints maybe take you an hour, maybe not. May take you a little bit longer. We'll see. But I'm going to start my entry. I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to take it a little bit slower than I usually would so that I can kind of explain the process. And yeah, I'm trying to get used to my new camera angle. I've got my new Mac Studio plugged in, and my shame Treblle doesn't detect ULIDs. Well, I can fix that. Chris, fix it. My new camera angle. My Mac Studio arrived, and my camera used to be on top of my Mac Mini over here, but now I've got a Mac Studio. I can't kind of put it on top using the stand I had, so I've had to put it on top of my monitor, which might feel a bit more natural, but it's giving me a lot of kind of glare. I think I might have to sit back. But we'll try it. We'll see what's going on. So where am I? I've got some code. I've got a way to run things. I've got a browser. I've got Treblle. I've got my project up on Treblle already. Come to my requests. This is a medium. So I need to look at how I can get this score down. Let's look at my headers. What have I got going on? Lots of stuff on my project so far. So this is a really simple API so far. It's got nothing in it. It has got one endpoint. Let me delete that. It has got one endpoint, which is just returning foo bar for now, just so I can make sure that it is running and working for the Treblle middleware, which I have installed. So if I come down to my Composer JSON, you'll see that I've got Treblle Laravel installed, the latest version. Now Composer will automatically install 3.0. I do not know why. It is really bugging me, but 4.0.35 is the latest version. I'm pretty sure I released that yesterday or today at some point. That is the one you want to be using if you're using Laravel. Please bear that in mind, because 3.0 will not work. The only other things that I have installed are Rove security advisories. Now, this is perfect for understanding your dependencies and the security of your dependencies. We aren't looking at that at Treblle, but from your perspective, you should definitely look at that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this face away. You can say goodbye to the beard for a little bit, and I'm going to focus in on the code. So let me zoom in, and let's start looking at what we need to do to get this to be an API. So Laravel, by default, it's the full stack framework, which is great. Full stack frameworks are fantastic, but we're building an API here. So vite config, no thank you. Package.json, definitely don't need you. We can come over to our resources and we can say goodbye to the CSS and JS. Come down to our views. Well, we don't need a view, so we can say bye to that as well. Do that refactor and say bye-bye. But we will want that views folder a little bit later. So we're going to add a git keep file in there. And the reason we want that views folder is we might want to add emails. We might want to send out emails from our API, in which case we may as well leave, unless we're going to integrate with an API service or something like that, we're going to build them ourselves. We can come back to that later on. Now we've got a database. We've got our roots here. Come over to our env. So let's have a look. So here's our local host. Connection, PG SQL, all good, all good. Session, we are going to switch this over to array. We don't actually need a session. We are building an API here. So come down to here. We've got MailPit installed up and running. Hello at example, or we're going to call this Twitter. This is my fake Twitter. AWS stuff, Pusher, not using right now. Vite, not using either. So we can delete that. So we got Melee Search, and I've got my Treblle stuff going on here. Now I will recycle that API key during this stream, so do not worry. It is, I'm not exposing secrets here. So that is now ready to go. I've got my Docker Compose. The services I have is PG SQL for the database, Postgres locally. Redis, I want Redis so I can cache. I can have an effective API. Melee Search, because eventually I'm going to be adding search to this API. So having that Melee Search client available so that I can build a good search is vital. MailPit, so that I can fake emails, and I've added Sockety, because what I'll eventually do on the front end is I'm going to build a Nuxt only front end for this, so I can consume my own API. And I'm going to want to connect to the Socrates server to pull in any potential broadcast messages from my API. And that's it. That's all my API does so far. So the first thing I like to do in any of these sorts of things is, let's come over to here and let's say composer require just Steve King, launchpad is going to complain because my stability is unstable, but I want dev because I've not actually published that package yet. So let's pull that in, move my desk around a little bit. I've not quite got my desk how I want it for this. Okay, so the other thing I want to install is composer require dev Nuno Maduro Lara Stan. We need Lara Stan, right? Once that is installed, we are then good to say, okay, so now we can set up PHP Stan. A setup Laravel point. So our code quality, we know we're going to have a pretty consistent code quality at this point. So what I like to do is I like to add a few extra things in here. So I like to add pint. So I can just say composer pint. And when I run this, I want to say vendor bin pint. That'll read from the configuration. Then with PHP Stan, we are going to run vendor bin PHP Stan, analyze, and I like to add a memory limit. So, because the default is quite low. So for this, I'm just going to stick it up to 6 gig. I've got a 64 gig machine now, so I'm sure I can spare that. And then finally, our tests. I might not get round to writing tests for this because I want to make sure I show you what I'm doing. So we will say vendor bin sale artisan test. We want to make sure we're testing within the environment where we need it to be. So we will run that through sale. It's not a huge deal. The first thing I will do, now that I've got all that set up, is if you have a look at the default Laravel, you've got this controller here, which is fine. It's not bad. I'm just going to hide all of these things. But to start with, that's not PSR12, which will bug me. I've got Pint for that. That's not a big deal. You know, it will add the strict types. But I never use this, but Pint will automatically make it final. So I make that an abstract class there. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to come down to here. Let me hide that. And have I got anything else set up? Let me just quickly configure this. So the sidebar, I can add me quickly. We're going to move that up the top. I've also got developer. Now, a cool little tip with Mac is if you create a directory in your home directory called developer, it'll automatically add this really cool little hammer because it's something that it recognizes. So I don't have anything on this machine yet other than this app, so I can't steal stubs, which is a pain. It means I'm gonna have to do it all manually, but please bear with me. Right, so we are currently, we want to look at our routing. So let's come down to our provider, root service provider. Let's just run Laravel Pint to clear everything up quickly. So we can just say composer Pint. That's going to clean everything the way that I like it. That is done. That's adding all these declare finals and this const home. Okay, that's fine. I'm not actually going to use this. So if you look at that, find usages, it's currently in this redirect if authenticated. Now, if I come over to my kernel over here, and what you'll see is, let me zoom out a little bit so we can focus on it. we've got all of those, they're fine. I don't actually need any of these web, so I can come over to my middleware and say encrypt cookies is no longer needed. I can delete that. Verify cross-site request token. Oh, actually, wait a minute. I will actually keep that because I'm going to be using Sanctum. Ignore me. Delete all of that. So this redirect guest, redirect if authenticated. This is an API. I am never going to give you a redirect. If I'm giving you a redirect, something's gone horribly wrong somewhere. So the root service provider, we can delete those. We want to remove that prefix. Let's budge this group up so we can put this base path down a level, make it clean and readable, and API routes.php. Perfect. Now this can be static and it will return a limit. I will add some named parameters for this because I want it to be a little bit cleaner. So callback is that, limit per minute is max attempts there. Then this key here, this is always something that trips over on static analysis. So the key, I'm just going to string val it for now and leave it at that. There we go. There is our rate limiter for the API. That home is now no longer needed, so I can delete that. That's perfect. And suddenly our root service provider is so much cleaner. It's focused in on the API. So I can come down to roots, create a new directory for the API. I'm going to grab this and just move it in. So let's refactor that. And let's just rename this to roots. Let's make sure this is okay. Yep, that is all good. That can also be static for now. So the web roots aren't needed. Remove those. Come up to our console kernel. Console kernel. Let's delete that. Let's delete that. And I don't ever use that, so I delete that personally. And delete that. I create a new directory inside roots called sockets. Broadcast. Sockets, roots. Grab the channels, move it in, and refactor. So I can just refactor, rename this to roots. Remove that, close it up. It's nice and clean, nice and readable, clean and readable, perfect. Any file that I touch, I like to make sure I leave it better than how I found it. So that is the channel. This is the callback. We can put that down on another level and we can say that's static and it's going to return bool. Now this will be a user model. So I can pull that in. And the ID is actually going to be a string because I don't use ints for that. So for this, I'll also use get key. So basically all this is doing is saying, okay, so return true if the authenticated user is the ID being passed in. So just going to do it like that. Nice and clean, nice and simple, nice, cleaned, good to go. Come over to our migrations. This is the first thing I look at from the application's perspective. Let's just make this ULID, ID, make it the primary key. Now we won't need a remember token. We are not having any sort of remembery stuff going on. Name, email, password, we are good. That is all I want right now. Actually, table, string, username. I will also make this unique. Remove that. So I can now come over to my user factory, delete that. Say model is the user class. Remember token can be gone. Password, I'll use the hash facade to make a new password. This needs to be switched over to this faker to kind of speed it up a little bit. Again, this faker, email verified at. What I would do is put the username here, and we will use a string helper for this part. So this will be name. And what we want is the string helper to slugify the name for now. That's the default behavior that we want. This will return a user factory. Let's just declare the state on this. Make sure that the return types are in there and correct. That is all good so far, which means we can come over to our user model. Use has ULIDs. Fillable, hidden, casts, and we will have a username. That is it so far. So now we can look at our reset token, clear this out, clean that up. That is all good. Failed jobs. Code quality is always important. Building a good platform means being diligent with absolutely everything, in my opinion. So the morph for the token needs to be a ULID morph. That will be tokenable. This is a typo, apparently, so I'm going to save it to the dictionary. And that is all of those. That means that now I can come over to here and just say, sale migrate. Ooh. Vendor bin sale artisan migrate. My bad, I did it wrong. There we go. All of that database is now up there on my Postgres database. The next step is I want to create a default user. So I know things are just going to work for me. So I'll say user equals user factory create. The attributes I want to pass in is name will be Steve McDougall. The email will be just stevemcd@gmail.com. And the username I want to use is my typical just Steve King. So what I can do is sale artisan db seed. I've now got a user. Fantastic. So if I think about why do I prefer PG SQL over MySQL? You know what? I don't know. Habit. MySQL's great. Don't get me wrong. MySQL is a fantastic bit of software. But for me, I like using Postgres. It's a bit more scalable. It's got a few extra functions that you can natively run, which are a little bit better. Yeah, the ULID morph will always trip you up. If you're using Laravel and it's got the personal access tokens, make sure you change the morph type. Always make sure. So next step, I have got a somewhat simple API available. Is not doing anything yet. So I need to look at creating some endpoints, right? So the whole purpose of Twerter is to twert, which is the same as tweet, but without the involvement of Elon Musk. So I need to make a model which will hold this. So make a model. We're going to create one called, can I zoom in on this? Yes, I can. We're going to make a model. So that is the same as me doing PHP artisan make model, by the way, but I've got an alias for A for artisan. Makes it so much easier. Definitely recommend doing that. So make a model. We are going to make a model. We're going to call it an announcement because it's not going to be a tweet, a twerp, a message. It's an announcement. I'm shouting something out. Make a model with a migration and a factory. Go. We're good to go. So if I come over to my database migrations, come over to my announcement quickly clean this up. declare it as static, give it the return type, clean that out. This will have a ULID. It will be primary, and it's going to be the ID. So we need to make sure this comes back to a user. So we need to use foreign ULIDs. So for foreign ULID, which will be the user ID, we will want to index that. It should be constrained to the users table. And if we delete the user, we want the twerps to be deleted or the announcements to be deleted. So we can add that in there, not a problem. Next, table. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add text as content because I don't want to just limit it to 255 characters, maybe. That might not be for me. So far, I've got content and the user. But like on Twitter, can I open Twitter? Where am I? Here I am. If I come to Twitter, this is a twerp. It'll eventually be something like Markdown. Currently it's got, you can reply, you can retweet, you can like, bookmark. So for me, I'm going to add table unsigned big integer for likes, and I'm going to default this to 0. So the idea there is that you can like something and it'll just kind of increase that, and I'll store that event in the background saying that so-and-so liked this. That is the start. So now I can come over to my factories, an announcement factory, and I'll put this over this side. So I can say, no, thank you. Declare my strict types, make this final, add in the model for an announcement. So the content, this faker, can I do Markdown? HTML, I could do random HTML, which I don't want to do. So for now, I will just use paragraphs. By default, it has 3, which is enough. So as text, yes, I don't want it to be done as an array. So likes, this faker, random, or sorry, I want a number between for this one. So between no likes and 10,000 likes, something simple. Don't need that. And then for the user, I will just use the user factory. So user factory, we're good. So at this point, a user will be able to make an announcement. Hello, Matteo. So over here, I need to say that use has ULIDs. I will need to add the fillable because I always use fillable. That is the Steve way. Likes and user ID. What I will also do over an app, I'm going to create some enums. And I am going to create a new enum called status. This is an enum. I'm going to return a string, case public, case reported. So just a nice way on an announcement to be able to say, okay, let's, this has been reported. So we can put status, default, status, public, value, done. Nice and clean. Simplify that. So with status, the whole purpose of this status is to say, okay, it's public, it's all good, anybody can view it, it's been reported, we might not want to do that. And then another one is promoted, paid promotions. hooking into something like Stripe to say, yeah, I'm going to pay $5 to promote it. Why not? So what this needs then is we need to then add a status here. Status, public, we're good. Need to add it in here too. So we've got status, but now we need to do a cast. We need to cast that to an enum. The status, please. There we go, class. That is good. So this has a user, so public function user. It belongs to that user. Return this belongs to the related model is the user, and the foreign key is the user ID. So now I can come over to my user and say, announcements has many. Return this has many. Related is an announcement. And the foreign key is the user ID itself. So this is enough to get me started. I've got all of that good to go. I can now just say sale artisan migrate. I am happy with that. That is up there. From model state, I haven't used a sparsely one. I like to do it my way. I'm always guilty of that. I do things my way. I'm very specific and picky, and it's probably annoying for a lot of people. What I want to do is just quickly run Composer Stan. I want to run PHP Stan and see how we're doing. So configuration file, source does not exist. Cool. So I can go create a new directory, source. I will be using that later. Composer Stan. No files found to analyze. Okay, so PHP Stan. I need to add my app directory and do that again. One error. Cannot access property ID on mixed. That is in the root service provider. That is fine right now. I'm not worrying about that this very second. So now we want to look at our roots, right? The whole point of this is to look at our security hackathon, the API itself. At the minute, we don't have much going on. So the first thing I want to do is let's get those headers in there. So composer require Treblle security headers. Let's get them in. Now let's go have a look at the package itself. So github.com Treblle security headers. Wow, I'm actually typing nicely on my keyboard. So we've got all of these things. Let me copy and publish. Let's just publish stuff. There we go. So we've got all of this available. There's the content. So we need to actually add these because they're not going to be added by default. I really should update the docs. If anyone I work with is watching, remind me to update the docs. Okay, so HTTP kernel. Okay, our API middleware here. We want to remove headers. Yes. We want let's come over to package. Let's walk through it. So I really need to document this. So strict transport security. We want this. So we also want strict transport security on our API. What does the referrer one do again? Oops. Come back to here. Set referrer policy. Yeah, that's all configured. Perfect. Set referrer policy. Permissions policy. So we're going to want that. we want the content type options. Let me just go double check that one, that I don't need to pass anything in. Yeah, I do. Cool. So content type options. And then we've got the certificate transparency. So they are now all on my API. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got additional headers now. So if I quickly just, I don't know, curl -I, HTTP, localhost, I can have a look at this. So my host is there, that's fine. I'm only using HTTP 1.1. That's okay. Date, connection close, cache control, no cache, content type application JSON, expect CT, enforce, X content type options, no sniff, permission policy, referrer policy, strict transport security, and I am rate limiting. So if I come back over to Treblle now, move the requests, this one here should have much better stuff going on. So IP reputation, authorization. This is one I'll work on next, and that's secure connection. It's not going to be over SSL. I'm not going to manage that because I'm just not using a certificate. Is there a way I can use a certificate on this? Anything that I can use? No, not really. So I'm not going to worry about that one. IDs versus UIDs, I am passing. I'm not using any IDs on that one. And the other ones I'm failing on. Embed protection, X-frame options. This is another header that we will want to add to mitigate any clickjacking attacks. So let's create that middleware. So make middleware security X-frame options middleware. And what we'll do, let's go and understand that one. So saying this header's value to deny or same origin. This would be a great one for me to add. However, X-frame options is one that's being depreciated. So let's come over to here and say X-frame options middleware. So the response is that we want to return the response, then the response, we need to var response headers, add X-frame options. I'm going to set that to deny by default. This will be a final class, declare strict type, so I can come down to my kernel and I can just go and say, okay, on my API, I also want X-frame options middleware added as well. So now at this point, I can curl again. I should now have X-frame options in here, X-frame options deny. So my next request that came in, let me turn real time on. There we go. 3 response headers, all good. Embedding prevention, I am now passing. Secure policies, content security policy. There is a sparsity package for this. There might be a way for Sail to do that. Let me have a look. Let me go to the docs. Let's go look at Sail, packages, Sail, HTTPS. Nope. SSL. No, I can't see anything on here about running it in a secure mode. There might be something that you can do, but I can't really see much. Laravel Dusk, previewing emails, container CLI, PHP versions, Node, sharing. sales share, proxies, subdomain. No, there's nothing I can do on that. So I am not going to worry too much. It's probably something that we will look over when it comes to your entries. If you aren't sharing using an SSL certificate, that is fine. We're not expecting you to set up the infrastructure and SSL certificate for an entry. That might be asking you to take it that little bit too far. So now we've got the X-Frames stuff going on. We can come back to here, secure site policies. It's an API. Content type specification. That accept header ensures API blah, 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 content type. Okay, so our API should always return application JSON for us, right? So let's make middleware content type type middleware go. So let's just add that here as well. So we're going to say the content type middleware. What this would do is just make sure that we are always responding in the right way. Return the response. What I need to do is just var response as response. That means I can then say response, headers, add accept application JSON. I should by default always return the right content type, but this will kind of ensure it from a middleware layer. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to say application / VND plus API.json. I want it to always return that. It'll accept JSON, but it will return that. So now let's curl again. Let's make sure that is in there, except that the content type will be that. That is great. So now if I come back, got a new one come through, security audit, content type specification. The accept header establishes, okay, so that isn't picking it up for some reason. I'll look at that. Method limiting. Allow, I'm pretty sure if I come to here, I thought I created one, so I'm just going to create another one. So make middleware, allow middleware, go. So what we want to do with this one, come down to here, alphabetical, let's put it here, allow will be allow middleware class. Cool. So this will take in methods. And what this is going to do is the response is that var response is response turn response like that. But that, don't forget there's a bug in one of these. I fixed that. That is all fixed and released. So to allow middleware, we want to only allow certain requests. So actually what we can do, we can just return that directly because we want to limit it early. And what we want to do is say, okay, methods. If our request method, or if in array. The needle is the request method. The haystack is methods. We will want to then say return new JSON. I don't like to do it that way. I'll just say JSON response for now. We'll refactor later. Data, status, status, bad request, done. Method not allowed, done. So what this will allow us to do is on a route, for example, API routes here, got the Treblle middleware, but we're also going to say allow get post put. We're going to allow that. So we can do it, we can add that, all good. Off we go. So let's carry on with our actual routing. Yeah, they update the package, Rob. Rob saying that there was a bug in one of the security headers, and that was actually released yesterday, so you should be all good. So the first thing, routes. I want this to be versioned. I want my API to be versioned. So route prefix v1 as v1. I always use route naming in Laravel group. And within here, I'm going to go to the base path to routes API v1.php, or actually v1 routes, just in case it gets a bit messy. So I can say v1 there, new PHP file, routes, declare script types, we are good. Let me go grab the facade and I can start to declare stuff out. So what I am going to do, I'm going to say route prefix announcements as announcements. This is me designing the API on the fly though, so please bear that in mind. Base path is going to be routes API v1 announcements.php. So this is how I group my routes, and this is what works for me. So within here, I can now create a new announcements file, declare some script types. Let's pull that facade over to here. It really keeps things super clean. So in here, I can say route get. This is where I'm going to list all. So let me just name that index. But what I want to do, v1, realistically, I'm going to have a couple of different groups. So I'll have middleware at this point, and this is going to be auth, authentication middleware, API, group, static, function, void, add that there. So now if I just a route list except vendor, that is all I've got so far. Get head showing one route v1 as that includes that, which includes that. That should be listing. So a config clear, a optimize clear, a route list, v1 announcements. Now, if I accept vendor, I don't know why that's classing it as a vendor. That's odd. That might be a bug, but that is loading. I am now getting authenticated routes here. And what I can do is anything that's not authenticated, I can just, let me wrap that in that, wrap that in that, and just delete that. unauthenticated routes will go there, authenticated routes will go there. I'm going to have mostly authenticated routes, which is why it's at the top for now. So in my announcements, I have got where I want to index. So a make controller v1 announcements index on controller. This will be invocable. I'm not going to generate a pest test. I'm going to do that completely differently at another point. So index controller, I can simplify that and come through to it. Let's declare some strict types. Let's remove that rubbish because I don't want it. At this point, we know we've got an authenticated user, but we want to get all announcements ordered by latest. So the simplest way to do this for now would be to return a new collection response. I will create a make resource v1 announcement resource. So the data we are going to pass back will be an announcement resource collection, where the resource is an announcement where we're going to start a query, order by latest, where not, or sorry, we'll do it this way, where status does not equal status reported, and we'll paginate. But what we also want, we want to include the with, we want to include the user. This will return responsible. At this point, we need to be logged in. So let's get auth set up. Breeze install. We're going to use Laravel Breeze. Okay, so composer require dev Laravel Breeze. I thought it was installed by default. Apparently not. So now I can run it again. And we're going to use number 3 for the API. No, I don't care about dark mode. Yes, I'm going to use pest. Good to go. Right. So at this point, I should have all of this stuff isn't really useful. So instead of here, auth sanctum. There we go. We've got auth sanctum going on. Now, this API route here, I'm just going to do away with. Web, I can do away with, and auth. So we've got all of these post requests at the moment. What we're going to do, we are going to move that into v1, refactor. Come over to routes. Routes, middleware. Can I just middleware group base path at this point? I can. So routes v1 auth.php. Let's make sure that they are loaded. A root list. We've got complaining. No such directory. Root file registrar. Okay, so the root service provider has had something happen, maybe? Roots, API v1. Here we go. So we got all of this going on. That's great. We've got Sanctum cookies. We've got lots of cool stuff going on. So at this point, we know that we can make an authenticated request. And what we are going to do is personal projects. Let's create a project and let's call this Twerter. Within here, let's just use that. Querta, and we're going to create a new request. No environment. Let's go to manage environment. It's a shame I can't. Oh, I can zoom in. View, zoom in, view, zoom in. Let's make sure we can actually see everything. So the URL is going to be HTTP localhost. That's all I care about right now. So we are going to use this. We are going to go to a request, the URL, and we're going to go to v1 announcements. Couldn't resolve the host name. That'll be why I did the environment wrong. HTTP. Close, send, root login not defined. Awesome. So accept. We want to say that we accept application JSON. We are authenticated. So at this point, we need to do another request. We are going to go through to the URL, sanctum, cross-site request forgery cookie. We are going to accept application JSON, the cookies that we get back, manage cookies, automatically sent with relevant requests. Awesome. So that should, in theory, send that request. Sanctum cookie request, announcements indexed, and now let's create a auth login request. So we will do a post request to login, I believe it is. If we do a post and we do accept application JSON, the content type we are sending over will be, again, application JSON. And the body JSON here should be, hey, email just Steve McD at gmail.com, and the password should be password. Root login could not be found. Okay, so if I come back to, let's just move Arc out of the way a minute and look at our routes, a route list. We've got v1 login. So it's actually v1 login, which is fine. Send that. Target class guest does not exist. Okay, so come over to our auth here, middleware guest. That is where on the kernel we deleted it, isn't it? Ah, that was a redirective authenticated. We deleted it. We'll recreate it. We're going to go make middleware guest middleware. It needs to be more specific, right? So in our kernel, close all of those. Come over to kernel here, and we can say guest middleware. Go fill this in. If auth check, if we fail auth, then return a new JSON response. The response, actually, we can go one better. We can say a message response where the data message is going to be, you must be authenticated to make this request. Oh no, this is guest. So if you are, my bad. So this route is for unauthenticated users only. Status. What would make a good status code, do you think? At this point, it's a bad request in my eyes. So that is a response or responsible. No, I don't need the value. There we go. So we want to send over a bad request. Oh, wrong enum, my bad. Remove that and remove that. We're going to pull in the Treblle one. There's no security at where has God? I have no idea what you're saying there. I do apologize. So the guest middleware. Okay, so at this point, can I session store not set on request? Okay, so come back to our env. It looks like our session needs to be set, really. So let's just do Redis. Cache driver again is Redis. Do that. Session store not set on request. A optimize clear. No, a class import is missing. I need to be able to import Redis. So I need to composer require. Let's go look at Redis config quickly. Make sure we pull in the default database Redis. Here we go. Come down to here. Migrations Redis, PHP Redis. This is what we need. Redis. Cool. Composer require Redis. Excellent. Try again. No, this is, I've had this issue before. Redis. Introduction. Yep, do that. All good. It is something to do with the facade here. So open up the config app, come down to aliases. That is the alias we need to pull in. So, why is this not working? Put a user in timeout. Someone's being spammy. They can go away. My channel, I'll do what I want. Okay, so controller dispatcher, dispatch, session store not set on request. I have never, ever noticed this before. Ever. Oh, wait, Sanctum. Sanctum throws. Start session, share errors. Send a request, protect routes, blah, blah, blah. So let me go have a look at the kernel. Go look at the API. Throttle, start session apparently. Start session. share. Share errors from session. It's because it's, here we go. That's good. That's good. So at this point, we're doing a post login, live our session. At this point, we should, in theory, be authenticated. So preview, we are getting something. So because the way Sanctum works, it uses cookies, which uses a session. So you still have to have session availability. So what I am now going to do is a sale artisan tinker. And what I'm going to do is app models announcement factory. We're going to make 50. Fingers crossed it works. There we go. So now if we come back here, we have got, well, we should have a paginated amount. So what we want to do here is HTTP. I'm going to create my own response for this. So the sponsors, the V1, let's go. I'm going to create a paginated response. This namespace is app HTTP responses V1. This is going to implement the responsible. Going to have a toResponse, which will return a JSON response. Return new JSON response. The constructor will accept a paginator. So we can do a private read-only paginator, abstract paginator as data, private read-only the status that we want to receive is going to be from there, status, but the default will be okay, which means that here the data will be this data and the status will be this status value. So we can then make that read only, come over to our controller, V1 here. Instead of that, we are going to use a paginated response. And the announcements are going to be this. Let me just drop that for a moment. So then the data can be a length aware paginator. Make items something arrayable. Announcement response resource collection, where the resource is the announcements. Let's see what that does. Call to undefined method, length aware paginator make. Darn it. Okay. Good call. Thank you. So items my bad. New length aware. Oh, Jesus Christ. Length aware paginator. So the items will be that. The total will be. So when we return the paginator, paginate recursive, blah, 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 per page, page name, that should have a title return, a total return back in theory. Oh, my wife brought me donuts and a coffee. Wow, I like this.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
How's hackathon?
Yeah, it's going good. Just getting stuff done. I need to fix my mic. It stopped working.
You sound funny.
Huh?
I was going to say you sound funny.
Are you watching me again?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm watching you.
Thanks. Oh, wow, look at the time. I really should try and wrap this up, shouldn't I? Maybe I'll do more tomorrow.
Maybe.
Okay, I'll do more tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, so for this, I'm just going to quickly dump on announcements. Let's just kind of comment that out and let's see what I'm getting. So, total. Announcements, total. My typing was going so well. Let's uncomment that. So we've got total per page. We're going to go 15. Current page is going to be request get page with a default of 1. Let's now remove that. And let's go and see what happens. Current page. Blah, 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 blah. Per page 15, 215. Total is coming through as null. Okay, let's just quickly, again, dump on announcements. Aha, I can do it that way. I thought I could. I didn't want to guess. Collapse data quickly. Links, total 50. Awesome. So, question mark page equals 2. That should change if I change it to 3, and it does. So we've got pagination going on. We've got authentication going on. I am going to call it a day for now. I will pick this back up again tomorrow. Like if I come back over to Treblle, for example, come over to my requests. Again, I haven't actually wrapped this endpoint in one yet. So if I come over to routes quickly, and we're going to say everything within here we want to send to Treblle. So now if I come over to Treblle, I haven't got real time turned on. Still on a medium risk, which is fine for now. Getting ID, data, blah, 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 security audit, secure connection. I'm ignoring authorization. It's not going to detect it because I'm using a cookie. That is not the end of the world for me right now because I know it is using a cookie. Might be something we might want to look at detecting as well. But we currently don't send cookies from the SDK. So for your specific use, do not do it this way. Like the cookie, I'm passing over the cookie. That is fine, but I'm not able to. We're currently not looking within that because this bit's too specific. This means we need to do some configuration and allow some flexibility on that one. So again, as I said, this is going to be user focused. So there will be some kind of going through and having a look. So don't worry too much. For now, I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to go eat these donuts, drink this coffee, and see what else I need to get done today. thank you very much for turning up. This was fun. I'm going to check my calendar, probably get another one scheduled for tomorrow. But yeah, let's see what we're doing. Let's get this hackathon done. Let's be awesome. Have a good day, good morning, good night, good whatever time it is. Stay awesome. Thanks for tuning in.